welcome back to part 2 of our free training for agency owners, consultants, and service providers. My name is Milica, and in today's video we'll talk about how to create a repeatable client onboarding process that will help you improve retention rates and lower the chances of your clients churning. If you haven't seen part 1 of this training yet, I encourage you to go back and check it out. Now, let's talk a bit about client onboarding. In short, client onboarding is the process of introducing a new client to your business and helping them get to know you and what you do. During the onboarding process, you're meant to define how your products or services work, show your value to your client, and how you'll be interacting with them during the course of your cooperation. And the better you set things up, the happier your client will be. More often than not, an onboarding process will have a couple of phases or steps. Here's a 4-step onboarding process we created here at Infinity. Step 1. Preparation. In this phase, you'll need to prepare additional documents, NDAs, and any resources before having the onboarding call with your client. Step 2. Strategy. This is where you'll be doing your competition research, creating a strategy for the upcoming work, and briefing your team. Step 3. Kickoff. In this phase, you'll be starting your cooperation. Step 4. Recap. This is where you'll send out a post-onboarding survey and have a meeting to see if the client is satisfied with everything. A lot of teams like to separate these steps into smaller ones to manage things better, but you should keep in mind that these are the 4 phases you definitely don't want to miss out on. Now, let's quickly go over the main benefits of a good onboarding process. A good onboarding process demonstrates the value of your product or service to your clients from the get-go, helping you lower churn rates and improve client retention. High retention rates equal high return on investment, which will ultimately help you grow your business. It also ensures your team always has a repeatable and automated onboarding process in place that can follow for each client and help them be more efficient. And you know that the more efficient you are, the happier your customers will be and come back for more. It also helps you build a strong relationship with your clients by outlining your actions and mapping important milestones right from the start. With a well-defined onboarding process, you get to establish two-way communication that will help you resolve any issues instantaneously and avoid complaints. With that in mind, what will you learn in part 2 of this training? We will show you how to build a custom onboarding process, define the phases of this process, organize and manage onboarding tasks, track the progress of your tasks, create a repeatable set of steps for your team, share the onboarding with your clients, and organize all of it in one place, that is Infinity. And now it's time to go to the board where our onboarding process is set up. A quick tip before we get started. Since you'll be doing a lot of work for a certain client and most likely sharing that board with them, our suggestion is to create a separate board for each of your clients in your workspace. That way, you'll have an easier time tracking progress for each client while they'll be able to have access to what you're working on. Now, let's go ahead and open our client work management board. Don't let the name of the board or the number of folders confuse you. We'll also be using this board in the third and final part of our training. For today, however, we'll focus on the introduction and onboarding folders. Let's start with the introduction folder. The introduction folder contains useful information about the client work management board. More specifically, it contains information that will help your clients, and sometimes even your team, navigate the board with more ease. Each of the columns in the folder describes a certain part of the board. For example, in the general column, we have items with some general information about all the folders within the board, as well as a word or two about board sharing. In the onboarding column, your new client could read about what they'll find in this folder, including contracts, NDAs, and other important data. Under goals, they can read a bit more about the goals folder, how you'll be organizing everything, and so on. In short, the introduction folder is a great way to introduce your onboarding and work management process to your client, as well as how Infinity works. The introduction folder can be as simple or as detailed as you want it to be. You can add important links there too, or go into even more detail about your company's onboarding process. You can also delete any items you don't think are necessary for your clients, or add new ones with more information. We've actually used the introduction folder in both our public roadmap as well as our product management template. Let's quickly open the public roadmap page again. As you can see, in the introduction part, we explain to our users how to comment on items, how to submit suggestions, and what they can expect out of the board in general. This has made things easier both for them and our support team. Of course, the introduction folder is not a necessity in this process, but it can certainly make things easier for your client because it will provide them with the information they need without having to go to you every single time. Now, let's move on to the actual onboarding. So, how do we organize this process? As I mentioned earlier in the video, our onboarding process consists out of 4 phases: preparation, strategy, kickoff, and recap. Each of the phases comes with a certain number of tasks you need to go through in order to successfully onboard your client. We use the columns view and the labels attribute to neatly separate our onboarding tasks into these 4 phases so that everyone, including your client and your team, can keep up with what's going on. What's great is that most of the tasks will stay the same regardless of the client, which means you'll get to save time and easily create an onboarding process. However, if needed, you can delete some of the tasks with ease or add new ones just as quickly. Now, let's imagine we're going to be working with Coca-Cola in the future. We'll first need to fill out the basic details, so I'll open the first item in the preparation column. Okay, so we have the client name already. I'll fill out the client company, email, and website next. You can, of course, create separate attributes for name, company, email, and website fields. Once we fill out these basic details, we can add additional content and notes, attachments, dates, as well as change the task status. If you have subtasks within this task, just check them off as you complete them. In case you or your team member have a question related to the onboarding task, just head over to the comment section and write a comment. Everyone in the team will see it, and the one team member with the information will be able to respond to it. Once we're done, we can change the status to done and move the progress bar all the way to 100%. You can change the completed date as well. Next, we'd move on to the following task, which includes creating and sending contracts and NDAs. Again, you can tick off the subtasks as you complete them, so both you and your client will know where you're at. Let's also add an NDA to our task. Okay, so now that we're done with everything, I'll change the status and move the progress bar again. Before we can move on to the strategy column, we'll first need to complete everything from the preparation phase. And just like in our first video, I'll switch to the All Tasks tab because it will be easier to go through everything. Once all tasks from the first column are completed, you can get started with the strategy phase. At any time during the process, you can assign different tasks to different team members so that everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. You can also create more tabs where you'll filter out only done tasks or tasks by certain team members. I also have a tab with the calendar view here in order to help me see when I'm supposed to do each of my tasks. If you have strict deadlines, this and the Gantt view will definitely come in handy to you. Once you reach the last task of the recap phase and both you and your client are happy with the outcome, you can finally say that your onboarding has been successful and that you can move on to the actual work part of your cooperation. But wait, what if your client asks to see and be a part of the onboarding process? No worries, you can share the entire board with them. Let's head over to the board manager. Board sharing functions in a similar way as form sharing, except that you have a couple of additional options. Since anyone with the link will have access to the board, you can add password protection to ensure that private data doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Anytime your client decides to open the board, they'll need to enter a password to do so. What you also get to decide, as the owner of the board, is what you want guest users to be able to do within it. They can create and edit items or post comments, which can be valuable for feedback. Keep in mind that once you enable board sharing, the entire board will be available to anyone with the link. However, since you'll have your work management process in the board as well, this is something that will be useful. But more about that in the next video.
This brings us to the end of part 2 of our training.
You can check out the client work management template right below the video and see how you'd create your own onboarding process. And whenever you're ready, head over to video number 3 to see how you can best organize and manage your goals, tasks, and data in Infinity in order to retain your clients long term.